All right, I'd like to open this select board meeting for the town of Clarksburg on Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 at 1 o'clock. We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, only one thing on the agenda today, and that is the discussion of the continued discussion of the budget for fiscal year 2024. And Lisa, would you just hand us?
That's this revised school budget, the latest.
Okay.
It doesn't reflect the grant that we think we're going to get, but we still have a final confirmation of that, so it's not.
How much would that be for, John?
We are projecting between 130 and 135,000,
Okay.
which would obviously cover a big chunk of that 188,000 that is still there.
Now, I was in SoftWrite, and do you still have special ed expenses for the balance of the year that you're expecting? Because I think that there's like 20.
For this year?
Yeah.
Yes, because we actually, for out of district, will be going over that number because the, well, I can't say this out. The out of district costs that we're going to incur for next year that are over have already started.
So you're not gonna have any, because I was thinking that if there was gonna be any residuals in that account, we could encumber it.
No.
No, okay.
Because that has already started unexpectedly. So, and as I clarified in communication this week, the total cost of that placement is $326,450. That's reflected in line at the end on line 224 for FY24, the out of district. So you can see the increase. It's an increase of about 200,000, but over this year, what was budgeted for this year. But we haven't started to receive bills for the change in placement yet, which are going to be significantly higher than what we're budgeted for because of the nature of the services.
So I remember you saying that the reimbursement kind of doesn't come until next year. So will there be any reimbursement for this fiscal year since it already started?
No, it goes. It's kind of like the almost like the vocational, the way they do that. It's a year behind. So we'll get money towards FY25, which under the current state of situation that could be still going on. So so it'll cover more of the costs. That year, the big issue, I don't know if you've seen that as part of the state budget, has been a discussion, is that they're projecting a 14% increase in out-of-district costs for school districts. You know, various parts of the legislature are advocating for schools to receive more funding in special education to cover those large increases that are being projected for out-of-district special education costs. Right now, there isn't, you know, there was one dialogue that was very disappointing was a statement that, well, districts can cover that from their SOA and other money they're getting in addition that, well, we don't get that in our smaller towns. So we are, you know, advocating for that to not be the plan because this large increase in a lot of districts that don't receive those SOA funds it's not equitable. You know, you want to talk about equity all the time. They don't talk about it in regard to the rural communities at all. So we're hopeful that there will be part of the budget that will cover that increase when it's finally approved.
John, what is the SOA?
Student Opportunity Act. They started that a couple of years ago. It was proposed to increase educational support at the state level for districts. I've just told the story many times. I remember being at a meeting in January of 2020 before the pandemic started. It was the midwinter meeting they have for all the superintendents down in Marlboro, and the commissioner said out of the $7 billion, 85% of it was going to 30 districts. And I remember thinking, how come nobody's, there's just a lot more than 30 districts at that meeting, there's about 300. So they've modified that a little bit so that some of the other districts that aren't quite as big as those 30 large, municipalities, urban municipalities are receiving money also, but it hasn't helped us at all. What we've discovered, and that was the thing that Tara applied for this year, was that they have a thing called an SOA grant with some of those funds that we applied for under the heading of providing more interventions in the classroom to support students that, to help with their learning gaps. So we already have 2 interventions in our budget. If we receive that SOA grant money, that will cover those salaries. We can put that money towards something else that is being budgeted right now. So that's why we really went after the SOA grant, because we saw it as a way to get funding out of this Opportunity Act that we have not qualified for in the past.
And does that look promising?
That's what we've been receiving communication saying that we received a small stipend for this year, $4,500 for each of our 4 districts. That's going towards some assessment tool upgrades, and that was just for the remainder of this in the last 2 months of the year. So the larger increases where we applied for were in FY24 and FY25, and we're not getting as much as we asked for, requested originally, but the projection is for around $260,000, which we're going to apply the percentages that we use for the MBSU. So Clarksburg pays 50% of the bills, we're also going to get 50% of this money that we're looking like it's a good chance we're going to receive it. That was a modified figure, was a 260 approximately. So we should, we've been communicating with DESE saying we really need to know in a clear confirmation if we're going to receive these funds, because we're going to use that towards helping with our budgets, especially in Clarksburg.
On line 225 and 223, so am I assuming that the 223 is like for Drury?
Yes.
And so then the 225 is that special ed only?
No, that's total.
That's a
It's
total
a total
for
two
223 and
added
224.
Ah, okay.
That's way.
So the 326, 450 for the special education, how many students is that for?
I really can't say that.
You can't say that.
I can tell you, well, yeah, I can't say that.
Okay. And is that something that's going to be going on more than 1 year?
Based on age, yes.
So, and how much of a reimbursement do we get from the state for that next year?
75, it's over, anything over 49,900 something, so I just use 50.
Oh, so they reimburse everything but the
No,
49,000?
anything over the first 50, roughly, it's
Yeah.
easier number to remember, you get reimbursed at 75%.
It's when you hear them talking about circuit breaker and how much they're going to cover, that's what they're talking about. So there's been different percentages over the years that they will reimburse, or there's been discussion about raising that up, so we're hopeful that they will raise that. They're always talking about it, they don't always do it.
So the circuit breaker on this is 75% of last year's? Is that kind of where that 30 grand?
We really have, it's per student, so we don't really, in the past, have students, we had one that qualified partially, but we don't, as a rule in our small districts, have students that go over that large amount.
Gotcha.
John, that circuit breaker applies to the special placement student?
Yes. It's all special education.
And it's any out of district, anything over 50,000.
Okay.
We did make some cutbacks in terms of teaching assistant positions. I think we're eliminating a couple positions because we were moving teaching staff into one of those interventionist positions that would cover more ground and provide more services in terms of instruction to the students because of their background. And we've had trouble filling the TA positions recently.
Everybody's having trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So we figure rather than put somebody in there that may not be able to handle it, we'd rather have a teacher doing that.
The 119 schools that didn't get any SOA funds in the state. And we have enough for them. The House did up Chapter 70 to $30 to $60 a student.
I'm sorry, what was that like?
The House, in their budget, it went from $30 a student increase to $60 a student increase. But because we don't have a lot of students, that number doesn't impact us that much. The MMA is pushing the Senate to put in 100, and then they'll all come back in the last week in July or last week in June, trying to figure out what the number is actually going to be.
So there is a chance the town could get more money through Chapter 70.
But not a measurable amount.
On line 58, the professional salaries, that's up like 14%. What does that include? Line 58.
Line 58, that includes the teachers, and that includes their step increases along with their, along with any raises. We also moved the, if you look below, the line 59, last year we had 87,000. We just put everything in, we had separated out the pre-K program originally because back 7 years ago when we
Excuse me.
started it, people wanted to see the individual expenses. So that upper line 58 includes pre-K and everything else. So your total increase, if you look at line 60,
Yep,
you only have a 53,000. I know
okay,
it's 53, but
that makes sense.
53,000.
Thank you.
And we don't, I just want to clarify, we don't have a new teaching contract agreed to yet.
So that's on hold until after town meeting?
Well, we put the negotiations on hold until we could resolve our budget issues. There were, a lot of teachers and the teacher union rep was at that joint meeting that we had, and they attended that meeting. So they agreed that we had to figure out how we were going to settle our budget deficit first. And what we put into into this budget as a estimate is a 2% increase. That's not agreed to, as is what we're projecting, and hopeful that we can come in somewhere in that range.
Well, where do we go from here, Carl?
Well, I would like to hear from Donna. We did get a couple of adjustments, some good, some not good. So I put in the pilot, went through all of the pilot agreements. Now there is a question as to whether they are captured already in the personal property. That's for the solar arrays, and which is personal or business property. So there is a possibility that might not be able to be added in as our revenue stream. In talking with Donna, also our pension costs attributable to the school union office has resulted in a $35,000 reduction in the budget, so that's a good news. On the flip side, we got our Chubb. I just got it today, and they said to plan on a 5% increase. It's more than that, so that's going to be a $7,000 increase in expenses. So,
What exactly is Chubb?
for the police and fire injured on duty, so it would cover
Like workman's comp for them?
kind of like that, and also healthcare services. There's a whole, well, actually,
Their stuff comes under a different chapter than normal.
death benefit, medical expenses, weekly indemnity. for things contagious, infectious diseases, heart or circulatory, cancer, and any adaptive mechanisms like needed for if they were, disabled for their home or their car, brain injury, child care expenses, coma. It's all bad stuff that you don't want anybody to ever
Understandable.
use.
I just wanted to understand what it was for. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
That $35,000, is that a definite?
Yeah, that's solid. So looking at where we are so far is with a 4% increase in the school's budget brings them to 2,838. Now, looking at, I think that we're still probably $130,000 in difference is what I'm thinking. So,
Well, if we, confirm this grant, that's gonna take the 130,000 off of the 188.
so it would appear with that grant, we should be okay.
Yeah,
How close are you to the grant? When will you know?
The last communication was Friday, where it was, Tara had submitted some updates to them that they wanted, and the response was that seemed to be within their parameters. And then she responded, we need a confirmation.
No, I guess what I'm getting at is, should we look for a postponed town meeting a little bit, or
From the May 31st date?
from the May 31st date?
I mean, I know you have things you have to do in town, so we don't want to cause any challenges with that. I know we talked
Well,
about that.
this is a big chunk of money.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't think 2 weeks would hurt. I don't think it would compromise what you're trying to do, if that's possible on your end. We talked about, could you go to the second week in June possibly? Or is that something that wouldn't work for your schedule?
It's not so much a scheduling as you're right up against, the end of the fiscal year. And per chance, and I've been to enough town meetings where some go swimmingly fast and, without controversy, and then others are contentious.
I don't think you have to change it. I think you leave it alone.
When do you think you will know definitely on that grant?
We're hopeful in another week or so, but, we don't have a definite, it's DESI, don't forget, so,
Okay.
So we're trying to make sure they can commit to it, but I would say that, what my plan would be for Thursday's meeting is we're gonna go in and talk about it with the school committee and, talk about, do we put that figure in there and, go with that number and submit it. That would be my recommendation at this time, based on the communication we've had from the state. I know it's a little bit of a camel, but not much. In truth, I think we received enough communication to indicate that we are going to receive those funds. I feel comfortable.
So you're pretty
saying
confident,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we don't want to jinx it.
I know.
There's wood on the wall, knock on it.
But that puts us off, what, like 40,000, 50,000?
We might not even be that far.
If you had your 4%, it pretty much leaves us there. I also, a couple things, we're using $350,000 of school choice. We upped that from 300, which is leaving us, I would say, somewhat perilous in the school choice realm.
Like our stabilization now?
Yeah, it's a school stabilization, yeah. The other issue is, and your numbers are going down for school choice, just because people are moving here.
Right.
So hopefully the property values will be going up more, and you'll get it on that side. But also, this budget, so many lines are level funded that we're tight, and I'm concerned about like electricity and fuel. We're, over, I think, what we budgeted last year, or close to it. And so we really nickeled and dimed this budget, and we, again, level funded, reduced, it sounds silly, but we reduced 100 here, 300 there. But then, you never have any idea what energy costs are gonna be, and obviously that's an issue for your entire
I was
budget.
just gonna say that, that's.
But we also took, we had $15,000 budgeted for capital repairs at the school. We budgeted $5,000 this year, so, if something happens.
Relative to electricity, are you in the aggregation Because when I was here last time, I tried to move your electric accounts into the aggregation, including the school union, which is at 9.9 cents per kilowatt hour. National Grid right now is between 23 and 31 cents an hour, or a kilowatt hour. And it's good till November.
I was gonna say it's going up to like 16 cents, I think.
We're gonna be going about 16 cents, but it's still better than National Grid.
Right.
And it doesn't change your electricity as far as your billing, your maintenance, transmission, distribution, all that stuff. But if you need some help and or assistance in moving that to Colonial Power, it can do nothing but save you.
Right, I understand that concept. I've done it, I just need to make sure that we're doing that. We might already be doing that.
Okay.
Just the communication between you and Lisa would be good to
So I'll follow up with you.
Okay, fair enough. I don't think we're that far away.
No, not with this grant.
No, and one thing, I mean, we all know we're in dire straits. I've been a little frustrated going around town. I walk up Horgan Road, and I notice up across from where the Horgan Road Trail goes in the state park, I don't know if you're familiar with it, there's a culvert there, and the beginning of it has caved in. I mean, it is a hole like you won't believe up across from, on Eunice Bulge's land. And I know West Road, the culvert up there's got to be replaced. These things are like a couple $100,000 to replace here and there. And what I worry about is we gave the impression, because we know that we are going to have some free cash coming in, but I want to make sure we don't let the school think that, oh, free cash are coming in, free cash is going to be going to the school, save us there. Because in my opinion, seeing things around, free cash has got to go to infrastructure. Some of these things are just, we're falling apart. Our infrastructure is falling apart. It hasn't been kept up because we haven't had the funds to do it. And we're trying to get these grants. We do have $1 million strap grant for part of Middle Road, but it's going to take time. It's going to take years for us to get out of this hole. So I realize that you're doing a level funded budget, and I'm certainly not anti-school. I think people realize all that we try to do for the school. But I look at it as we're the town as a whole, and the town's suffering, and infrastructure is really suffering. And I look at the suffering's got to be spread out through the community, which includes the school. I do not want to see programs cut, and I do not want to see the school suffer. But on the other hand, you've got to suffer as much as the town does, if I can make my point. So I would just say, do the best you can to keep going down on this budget, and don't think that when free cash comes in, it's going to save us. It's not. We're going to be in this situation for a few years to come. I hope gradually we can build out of it. One good thing is I have taught a financial course for years through St. John's Church, and it's funny, it's called 3 Simple Steps, and our federal government's breaking all 3, which is funny on this. But it's like, it seems like responsibility and going into debt is such an easy thing to do. We got one more year, we will be debt-free in Clarksburg, and that, to me, is the start of moving in the right direction. But it's just, it's not going to be easy, and there's going to be a lot of discussions, there's going to be a lot of wishing we could do more, but we have really got to concentrate on infrastructure in the town.
Well, in
the next couple of years.
diversifying the tax base too, so that's where we're trying to look, and we will be wanting permission from the school committee, because the building is under your care, control, and custody. That once we have a roof on there, if we go out to get a request for proposals for a solar array, there's 2 components. There's the excise tax, but there's also going to be lease payments for about a 20-year stream. And I would like to set up a revolving fund where that revenue stream from the lease payments would be placed into a revolving fund. And every year at town meeting, it's very much like our forfeitures for the police department that pays for training and gasoline and investigations and things of that nature. And that would be under the control of the school committee, by the way. So that money could be put in to repair and upgrade the elementary school. So we're trying to get additional revenue streams that are not dependent upon the property tax, because we are at our limit. And I believe last year we were like $1,049 below our limit. I mean, we're that close. And we're trying really, really hard to balance this budget and not have to go to a Prop 2.5 override, because that's not going to go over well. And I think, being mindful of the governor's budget, which was a terrible disappointment, is that both the town and the school saw less than a 1% increase in aid. And if you look on a map and you see how teeny, teeny, tiny Clarksburg is, and then understand that the state owns 53% of this little teeny, tiny town, it exacerbates our revenue problems terribly. And I've been on my soapbox about that for 20 years. I started yakking about that in 2002. And not much has changed.
And that's not going to too much.
Well, if you give up, it'll never change.
But then the other thing is with free cash too, I want to mention is that it is recommended that we have a couple $100,000 for, like, if a culvert fails, we've got an emergency situation. We cannot, that money has got to be there in free cash in the stabilization fund. So it's not money that we can just use. And I just thought that when we were out at the meeting up at the school a while back, that it was like, oh, free cash is going to come in, it's going to save us. And after thinking about it and studying it, maybe we didn't get that impression, but I was worried that...
No offense, but
Okay, well, that's good to hear, because I was worried that maybe people were thinking, oh, the free cash will come in, we're going to be all set. No, that's just going to help us get out of the hole, but we're not going to
We
be all
need to
set.
reestablish and put in some money in the stabilization that we're using right now.
Exactly.
We haven't had a terrible emergency, and God pray that we don't have one. But, when it all comes down, push comes to shove, if you have an emergency, what little we have in stabilization is not going to really affect much. You can declare an emergency and do a deficit spend, and then go to town meeting and borrow. There's nothing else we could do. And hope, clear minds prevail.
it's kind of the same situation the school's in too, because when I first got here 5 years ago, we had more money in school choice, but through several administrations, we've been asked to use those funds to help balance the budget, help pay for projects at the school, help in several different areas that you don't traditionally use, and we've done that. So, with this increase in the special education costs for this upcoming year, usually that's one of the resources you would use for covering those, and we don't have that reserve anymore. So we're in the same boat. We need to figure out ways to build up our reserves as well, and that's what our school choice is used for in small rural communities like this one. So, the key thing I think is what I've been saying, the 5 years I've been here, every budget season has been challenging, and this one probably the most challenging one we've had due to some unforeseen circumstances, but as well as some of the usual circumstances. So, what's our plan long term? I think that's one thing we've been talking about off and on since my first year in the town, and what kind of, I think it's important that we do put some time and consideration into what is a plan, so that way you're addressing your road issues and infrastructure issues, and we're addressing the school issues, and, is a solar array on top of the roof reasonable plan, because when are we gonna get the roof fixed, truthfully, or how are we gonna do that? So there's a lot of things that really I think there's a lot of really challenging, tough decisions, and we're grateful that this board is in place now, because I think, you're asking a lot of questions and having some of the dialogue that needs to happen to figure out what the priorities are going to be in this town, and getting some of the residents to really get involved. And, I think that's one of the things this town needs, is more involvement from the residents, and, letting all of you know and all of us know as town and school leaders what their priorities are, so we can make a plan going forward. Because I always say, one of the biggest things I worry about with our school is, if we don't address some of these big issues, and we've been addressing them slowly but surely in terms of the building, but what happens if we don't get to all of them, and, there's some issue that happens where we're not in compliance? So where do what happens to our kids then? And we have to make sure we're prioritizing, our kids, because they're our future, and we know that we have to work in in total with the town's budget and priorities as well, and that's not always an easy situation, but we gotta figure it out together. Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
And we, you know, we need to be proactive on our end too. So in addition to the solar proposal that we're gonna bring to town meeting for the school, we also have one for the dump, for the old landfill. And so, and that would go to the general fund, but nevertheless, it should. And it's gonna take time. This isn't gonna happen probably even in the next budget year, but if we don't start now,
Right.
it won't happen like for a long time. We're trying, and we're not your enemies. You know, we have a lot of responsibility to both the school, but also to the town residents. And I don't think anybody can make the case that we're spendthrifts, because we're certainly not.
John, when you're, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but your school choice funds are decreasing like every year. Have you come up with a plan how to, you know, offset some of this issue, or is
Well, I think
how to get more money for the school?
Yeah, we have a solid base of school choice. What's happened the last couple of years, we've graduated some larger classes that had, 7, 8, 9 school choice students in those classes. So those were decisions that were made a long time ago, right? So they were either filling classes, in some cases, we had a few of those double classrooms, which, is
Right.
the building can't really accommodate, truthfully. So we've made a really conscientious effort to only go up as high as 18 students in a classroom if we're going to accept school choice, because what we found in the past was if you accept more than that, then as families continue to move into town because they want their children in that school, that's where they land, right? In that classroom where you're up above 20 or so. And then you start talking about having some more challenges in terms of education. And I think, one of the things that the pandemic really motivated with families was that during that time we didn't take any school choice, right? Because we were trying to keep our numbers lower so we could spread kids out and have the space and the building to do so. So families really started prioritizing moving into town. We have a large influx of, I would say, younger families with younger children who are populating our pre-K program. We don't have any school choice because we have good numbers in pre-K right through kindergarten. So,
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying. So you're not going to have that school choice money.
Right.
So what's your plan for the future?
I think there's some discussion at the school committee about, can we continue with the pre-K through 8 model? Is that through grade 8? Is that something that is realistic for us? We haven't had that. We've had preliminary discussions and we've tried to keep it the same because that's what the feedback we get from the residents would be, is that they want their children in school here until they have to go to high school. So we had to add the pre-K a couple of years ago because our kids had no place to go. And if you look at data comparing students that don't have a pre-kindergarten program versus students who are in a pre-kindergarten program, the results are pretty clear that it's a big benefit to the education of those children to have those extra years of schooling before they come to kindergarten. That's why we came to the town. The town was great about prioritizing that. We worked with Jim Stakanis and the leadership at that time to have that approved. Of course, that's more money in the budget, right? And I know that's something that we've talked about is a challenge because there's not extra dollars flying around this town to put in the budget.
Well, that was for 4-year-olds, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now you're looking to go to 3-year-olds as well.
We do have the 3-year-olds, and they're a half day. So one of the things that we're proposing is to try to make it a full day. We would ask the families if they're willing to pay for the afternoon. So the original proposal was only for 4-year-olds. You're right. So, but we got a lot of pushback from families that year that wanted to have the 3-year-olds in too. So, and that's we're required to provide services for educational plans as soon as they turn 3. So we always have done that. But, can we provide a plan for them that would allow them to be in school also? We found this year that the half-day program did discourage families because they needed a place for the kids to go in the afternoon and they didn't have a lot of options in town for daycare or other, childcare. So we're trying to figure out how do we make the budget happy, how do we make our residents happy, how do we make it all balanced, and that's what we're working on. There was a proposal a couple of years ago that I made about could we look at the junior high kids, but that was soundly told no. So when we did a survey and by the school committee. So we have looked at other options for how we can either reduce costs and still maintain our school, and we're still trying to work on what's the best plan for them.
What was the response to, for the 3-year-olds to be paying like tuition, if you will, from the parents?
We've just been trying to get some information out, so we're doing registration now, so we're planning on putting a survey out to them to ask. Well, we've had some kind of informal conversations that seem to indicate that would be favorable, but we don't have figures yet on that, so we have to really do a more formal survey to ask.
Well, how many children roughly is there in that 3-year-old?
12 in each.
12?
In the 3-year-old program and 12 in the 4-year-old program. That's what we're projecting, based on.
And those are all residents, there's no,
Do they do school choice for pre-K? No.
no. If you did, you'd have to charge tuition to the families, and a lot of families don't want to pay that directly,
Okay.
even though it's still a lot cheaper than daycare.
Yeah, but I guess that's one of the points is, I think preschool is excellent, and I do think that the studies show that it works. But if people are using it so they don't have to pay a babysitter or do daycare, they should be paying to have their kids going to school. So, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's why they're using it, but I mean, everybody has different motivations. Ours is to educate the kids starting at 3, because it's shown, I mean, kindergarten is like first grade was a couple of years ago. You know, they changed the standards across the state, so if your kindergarten students coming in don't have a really strong family education plan, or just don't have the benefit of pre-K, then they're behind.
yeah. I look at myself, I had a 3-year-old, I would much rather pay what I'm going to pay in childcare to have them go to Clarksburg school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, that could be like an offset for that grades if they're willing to do that, and I think they should be, in my opinion, because.
And we put some of that in the budget. We're planning to do that, so that's what we're planning to do.
Yeah, not to go off topic, but I don't remember what the proposal was for the junior high. You said it was shot down?
It was just an informal conversation with school committee and just kind of informally surveying families.
To
We
do what?
do have some families that leave early to go to the
8th grade.
high
go to
school
high
because
school.
of sports, music, different
Oh,
types of
yeah,
programs.
okay, I
So-
remember, yeah, okay, yeah,
So they school choice out of Clarksburg, not many, a few.
right.
I think in some cases might be a few more kids that would want to, but their families don't want them to. So,
Yeah.
so I would say that that's probably as far as I want to go with that. in a
Yeah,
board
yeah,
meeting,
yeah, I
but,
get that.
But there are, as there's more emphasis on AAU teams and other things, there are kids that want to get the benefit of playing on their high school team, 5-6 days a week, as opposed to going to a youth league in 7th grade. So some families do take advantage of that. They do in Florida as well. So it's not a large number, but there are a few more each year.
All right.
Plus, I mean, if you think about a child that when they get to 7th, 8th grade, the more social aspect, and that's, in our school, they get the benefit of a small classroom, which we all, as adults, know is a big benefit to them, but some of them are looking around the classroom, but I've been the same 12 kids for the last 8 years, I'm tired of looking at them, so I mean, truthfully, it's just more a social aspect too that goes along with some of the kids that would rather go to a larger school.
Would there be a big cost savings if 7th and 8th grade, let's say they all went, we only went through 6th grade, would that save Clarksburg money?
Well, a couple of years ago, it wouldn't have, because we had about 30 kids in the 8th grade, and we had about, I think, 25 in the 7th grade, so we knew that the tuition costs also wouldn't have offset the staff cuts. So, I know we had, just so you know, I mean, I was doing my homework, we did some preliminary conversations with North Adams, and they were saying they needed teachers, and they would gladly take our teachers that we didn't have. Or they would give them a fair opportunity, let's put it that way, they didn't say they're gonna take them, so.
But there really wasn't a huge
There
cost.
wasn't a huge savings, but we would have to look at it a little more. It was a very informal
Okay.
look.
It had to do with space too. That's just-
Had to do with space too, because we talked about having our own special education program in the school, and by doing that, it could also allow us to do that for younger students if as needed. We don't have that same need as we had a couple of years ago in regard to those types of programs, but given the last couple of years, there's certainly been a lot more need for the students, social emotional needs, and we're trying to make sure we can meet those within the school, so we're not having to send them outside of the school because that's when the costs really start to pile up. So, we've looked at, so I guess the answer, we have looked at a lot of different options, and we're trying to figure out, what would be the best one for the students, but also what's the best one to try to save some money if they're gonna do it. It's not gonna save any money, what's the point of doing it?
Right.
Well, one of the draws, at least back in my day, was that Clarksburg went up through 8th grade. You know, so and that would,
It still is.
yeah, I'm sure it is, yeah. That's big.
It's a strange time in a child's life, as you all know, those middle teen or early
I
teen
know,
years.
I get, yeah.
Are we ready
Yeah.
for high school? Are we not? You know, it's something special about Clarksburg that we're able to keep them for those that want to, just as they mature that much more in those years.
Yeah, you're much more ready to go from Clarksburg to Drury or McCann than, you know, being, and I think it was when we did actually move up here because of the school district. I was worried about when my son got to 6th grade, if he went to North Adams schools, if he's going to fall between the cracks there. I didn't know. You're not sure if he's mature enough at that age to,
Yeah.
I knew he would be, but, come 8th grade, so.
And they mature so quickly between 8th
I
grade
know,
and senior year in high school.
But I've seen some
I
that,
hope so.
yeah. Anyway.
Jeff, I also want to let you know, I mean, over the years, we've spent well over $400,000 a year of school choice money. For the last 3 or 4 years, I actually went back and looked, and we're bringing in less than $300,000, and every year it gets a little less. So it's, and part of that was when we used that $400,000 and then had bills come in that we had to cover, and we had to use more school choice. We did that partially at the request of the town to lower our school budget.
Yes, I remember that.
So it's not like, I don't feel that we're being irresponsible.
I wasn't trying to insinuate that,
Okay,
I wasn't trying to insinuate, that you're being irresponsible. I remember before the school choice, so, I mean, it started off with a few children, then there was quite a bit, and a fund built up, but you've always used it to offset. That wasn't an insinuation. I'm sorry if that's, I don't know what made you think I would think that, but I don't.
Well, again, the number we're going now is more in line with what we're taking in, so we're trying to get back to where we're just using what we're taking in, which is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at numbers tomorrow and at our June meeting.
Yep.
Also for the next year, and just seeing if there's room to.
Yeah, we'll add some more signs.
Yeah.
Well,
We
and I
realize the
think,
issue.
I think the case should be made to our elected officials and DESE. If the pandemic has shown us anything, smaller school systems are very desirable versus the MIC schools of the big cities where you got a couple thousand students. How do you socially distance yourself from another neighbor? So I think that point needs to be driven home, that they need to preserve the small town elementary schools.
Yeah.
And for some communities, that's the biggest part of their identity. And we're the same. We're no different.
Right, because truthfully, the model that I think that we're operating under as our union goes is one that would be a more sustainable model than trying to, combine and regionalize all districts from pre-K through 12. I think the better plan is to have these pre-K through 6 or 8 schools, with the regionalization coming at the high school level, because that's when the kids, like you said, they mature a lot quicker from grades 9 through 12, and it would allow, by combining more at those upper grade levels, it would allow them to have more of those athletic programs that they're struggling to maintain now, or the music, or whatever else they're trying to do. They're doing now a lot of these co-op things going on, but it would be a lot better if they could combine at those higher levels and then leave the younger kids alone, because they need those smaller settings to learn in. But that's something the state isn't really pushing right now, so.
Can you regionalize a segment of the school population, like for high school, do a regional? And has that been something we've considered? I guess where I'm going with that is that it's a practice we're already doing. We're tuitioning right now. But if North Adams, Williamstown, Adams, whatever the mix would be, if you had a regional high school, then would that assist in, like, for instance, transportation costs, which I know because we're not a district, we don't get any transportation money. Even though the school union almost serves the same purpose.
there's a lot of rigidity, as you know, in a lot of towns. So, for example, we did talk about that within our own union several years ago. Clarksburg School Committee was in favor of chatting about it amongst our own 5 towns, but some of the other ones were not because they wanted to maintain their independence. Because one of the big, assets I was bringing to that conversation was that if we were combining amongst the 5 of us, so for example, like at that time Savoy was bringing kids to Florida, they would get reimbursed for that because of the regional transportation that we'd be qualifying for. We don't qualify for that now, and as we know, transportation costs are going through the roof. So how do we, get some of our towns to consider some other options? I know everybody's afraid of that R word, but there's certain benefits to different parts of it that could work for us. And I understand why there's that concern about that, but how can we do it, like you said, how can we do it at the higher levels? Like we're kind of doing it now, we're tuitioning our kids to the high school.
Clearly.
How do we make that work more effectively amongst the districts so that we can still maintain our independence with the younger students, but we can have some kind of a collaborative effort even more so with the older students. So that's a work in progress, I guess.
And then you wouldn't get the parochialism of, you're not going to close my school type of a thing, because it's already, those students are already going to another school. Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick question, Carl, when is your next full reval?
26. And here's the catch-22 that Clarksburg finds itself. So if you reassess by class, so and type of property. So you compare ranches to ranches, capes to capes, colonials to colonials.
Neighborhood to neighborhood.
Not so much in Clarksburg because there's really not much differentiation. There's no industrial district per se. But the thing is then you need between 7 and 10, minimum of 7 to 10 sales of each type to affect changes in that class of property. And I'll give you a good example. I mean, we had a house that was assessed, I believe it was a 243 or 246. It sold for 450. But unless you have 7 to 10 sales of that type of property, you can't just unilaterally go into the system and edit these things. So it's a very cumbersome and archaic system.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm asking is Buckland in 2020 on, I was a tax collector, and that's why I know this. We actually put a wall up. They had one property sell for less than assessed value. Everything else was, the minimum was like 20 or 30,000. There was one that was a couple $100,000, like the example you gave. And they may not have been by class because, again, Buckland's in the same situation you guys are in some ways. But it did have an impact because there were just so many sales and there were so many improvements and people moving out. We got the big, what do they call it, urban flight. People who had a little country home here, moved here and improved their house. So I was just hoping that, and I hear it. I mean, I know a lot of people that moved to Clarksburg and they all improved the kitchen and they all look at fixing, getting a new garage or anything.
Well, hopefully they're filling out building permits because that is the
Well, but even if they don't,
trigger.
our assessor would go online and she'd look at MLS. She would look at, because a lot of them then they would be bragging on Facebook about their house or showing pictures. She used that and went after them. And drove around town, because when it's a small town, everybody knows everybody.
And you had an assessor.
Well, we had an assessor, yes.
See, and what we're going to start doing is we have to physically measure every house. And of course, I'm sure you are aware of the interesting shootings of people mistakenly going to a house. And so there's...
It's harder to get to.
It's unnerving, to say the least. I'm the interim assessor. And so what we're going to do, because we have 800 houses to do in 2.5 years, is that with the tax bills, we're going to start sending out notices of maybe to the tune of 15 to 20. We're going to make an appointment with you. We're here to inspect and measure. And that's it. And so the situation is evolving. it seems counterintuitive that you would need a Kevlar pass to be an assessor, but I've had some interesting discussions with other ones and their experiences, and so it's not as quite as simple as it might seem.
I understand that. I just, seems there's there's been a lot of investment in your community from.
Well, I think one area that we need to work harder at is the second home market, because it's a second home. Therefore, all of the furnishings inside it are taxable as personal property.
Yep.
How many are residents, and how many are second home people? You got to establish that too.
As you're talking to it, remind me, there are two families, that moved into town that have school-aged children that are waiting to the end of the school year to move the children into our school. So that will impact some of our numbers, trying to figure out how many spaces do we have open. And but I know both of those houses were, decent purchases. I know from one in particular was a friend's home, and another one I think is on Sandy Street. So it's so there's also so there's some good purchases going on, and also bringing more students into our school, which does hurt the number of kids that get accepted in school choice, but does, give us families that are going to be very supportive of having a school.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we've had this chat, repetitively over the years.
Many years.
We want to encourage, I think when we went to DESI before and they were saying that your population is going down, well, it's actually going to U-turn. And ultimately, it's going to be the case. 30% of the town, kind of, sort of, more or less, are elderly folks, and time waits for no man.
Right, that's what's impacting our school choice more than anything, is an increase in residents in the school. So that's only so much space you can go to.
For the first time in a number of years, we've stopped hemorrhaging residents. Our population is actually stabilizing.
That's good.
I think we went up 100. So, because it's been a downward slide for probably 35 years.
Sure, right.
Teacher.
Yeah. I'm actually going to take off my principal hat and speak as a resident. I appreciate your comments about the free cash and saying that, there are things that the town needs to do, because I consider myself a pretty educated person, but there's some misconceptions out there for sure. And if I'm feeling that way, then I tend to think there may be other residents feeling the same way. That, if we have a meeting and we say that the budget is in dire straits and we don't have any money, but, the free cash might be available in April or might be available in June, the rest of us are sitting there saying, okay, well, we just got to wait a little bit, and if we can hurry up and get this free, it'll take us out. So I really think, I don't know what you can do, but I think people need to know that this free cash isn't necessarily going to pull us out of where we are. And it's not going to come anytime soon. It's going to take a while, and we need to be honest with people about that. And I'm not saying you're being dishonest, but we're hearing mixed messages, and that's the part where I think there's some confusion.
Well, Sandy, I speak to so many people who don't understand the whole concept of free cash,
Right.
or what it is, or what it, or even the stabilization account. People, and I have to say it, before I came here, I had no idea how complicated this type of thing
Right.
was. I thought money came in, and it's very complicated. So when you talk about recertifying your free cash, people don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But when they get to town meeting, I just want people to know that we did deplete the stabilization dangerously low, and that free cash it's going to happen. When you were asking us earlier about, can it be done in April? I want to say, we wanted to say something to give you hope, but when I'm talking to the finance people, I knew it wasn't going to happen. And I didn't want to go in saying, okay, we're going to try for this. I'm hoping, me personally, for the end of the calendar year, I'm hoping to have that, recertified. And then to put that into stabilization, so we can have something, and like Bob said, in case of the culvert, not in case, they're going. We already have two,
Right.
there's a, $500,000-$600,000. So again, it's not, I don't know if, I just don't think the town residents, myself included prior to this, know how towns operate. So I don't know if anybody knows about free cash or stabilization.
Right.
The same 20-something people come to town meeting, they're the ones that know, and everybody else, you know, they have no idea, so I
And
wouldn't.
I didn't know until I was.
No, and we're not
started
trying to keep
attending.
anything from anybody, it's just, yeah.
I guess that the best way to describe free cash versus stabilization and liken it to your own finances, free cash is the money you have left over in your checkbook,
At the end of the month, yeah.
okay? And stabilization is your savings account.
I'd say stabilization is your investment accounts, the ones you don't touch unless you need it.
It's your bank account. It's your-
Well,
it's your
But
bank
you want
account.
to clarify with this free cash, if you don't certify 2022 by June 30th, then as soon as you start the certification process of certifying your free cash, your 2023 is gonna roll in. So you'll still have to finish closing out 21, 22, and 23 before you get certified free cash.
That's what-
I
yes.
want, sometimes people don't understand that.
No,
They
I
think-
get that,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I wasn't
no,
trying
that's
to,
fine.
No.
but I was trying to clarify, because
And
that's
that's
something I
where
don't
we're
understand.
figuring. That's where we're figuring right now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. December, January makes sense.
Yeah. So,
No, actually, I appreciate the communication, because sometimes, especially in part-time selectmen, I'll speak for myself, I don't know all these issues or whatever. So I want to make sure none of us are sensitive when we bring things up that, well, did you know this? And you said, well, of course I knew this. Well, I'd rather be insulted a little bit and hear it than to not communicate, because I really feel the breakdown of communication is terrible. Good communication will help us all, so.
And sometimes some people explain things in a different way, where,
Right.
like, I took stats and never understood standard deviation until my husband took stats and explained it to me, and I had it 3 times before I got there. So I understand that sometimes people don't understand it, and having lived it for the last,
Yeah, sometimes we think we
10 years.
understand something, then we hear, like you say, you hear a different point of view, and say, oh, I never looked at it from that. So please don't ever be afraid to speak up, anybody.
One of the biggest breakdowns in communications I'm feeling is the lack of the finance committee. And we really could use a finance committee, because, again, and I know, I've seen it in your emails, John, you know, you would have met with Jim at, 3 or 4 times at this point. And so that's another big thing on my to-do list, is to, get a finance committee back in here. And the last joint meeting we had with the school committee, people said, we have people that are looking to help. If they could help in that way.
but they'd have to be a resident.
Well, I'm sure we have everybody in this town that could fill these positions. We have capable people. It's just, and nobody really wants to do it, to put in the effort. It is. It's
So let's step up and put some effort in. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Some of the residents gotta get involved.
I have a list going in my phone right now, like, as I'm sitting there thinking, okay, who would be good with finances,
Yeah.
and I'm putting in there as I run into people, and have a conversation with them, but the few people so far, look, I'm not getting involved, I'm not touching it, I don't want any part of it,
And
and
I think that the public discourse regarding government as being the big evil boogeyman type of a thing is not helpful. I think people need to step back a little bit and say, we, the people, are the government. We are a self-governing society. And if you want better government, and if you want accountability, and if you want thrift, well, then step up to the plate and shoulder your share of the burden. And we've had many people who have served this town for 30 years or better, and God bless them, and thank you very much.
And it doesn't take that much time. That's the thing. I think volunteerism is the backbone of a good community, and I think a lot of people feel that it's going to use all their time, and it doesn't. A couple hours a week, it would make such a huge difference. So I'd ask people at home, please volunteer. Younger people, get involved. And these committees are a good place to do it on, because it is. It's only a couple hours a week here and there.
okay.
I think we're close.
Yeah.
I think we're close, my friends.
Oh, I feel better with that grant, hopefully that comes through. That
It'll make things a lot better.
that'll get us there
Goes through a year.
another year.
We have to, if we're going to aim for the 31st, we have to close and post on the
Week before.
22nd. And so that's that's what we're aiming for, to close it. We got to be 7 days before. It's got to be posted 7 days before the meeting. So we'll probably have another meeting. I've got a couple of sets of eyes on everything to make sure that everything is where we expect it to be. So this is not the last hurrah. Hopefully you have good news. Hopefully we have good news, and we'll all have good news. And but unless I'm hearing anything differently, I think that we're going to be going with the 31st.
I don't think so. You comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you still need us tomorrow evening at your?
I'm
I'm going to go anyway
welcome to go.
because relative to the roof and the siding type of thing, if you have any questions, I can certainly answer them for you.
And you posted the meeting to cover, so.
Yeah.
I know Dan said he was.
That was the weirdest posting I ever did. We'll follow their agenda. But it is what it
A
is.
few of those in a row recently, or so. That's, I think it just covers, so that way you can be part of the conversation.
Well, that's it. So we are posted, so if anybody wants to go to the meeting, by all means,
Yeah, I'm planning.
we're
to.
good. We're good to go, so.
Yeah, I mean, our plan is to go over the budget, and if we, to vote on these adjustments for the school committee, and try the best we can to get these numbers certified to you as soon as possible.
And if anything breaks per chance and you hear good or bad, I'd prefer good.
Yeah.
On the grant, a call or an email is always appreciated. And please, if you can, let me know on your electricity, and we'll help you out there.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
Yes, yeah, it's very easy to
No,
opt in.
every community I've been involved in has been involved in one, so.
Yeah.
I generally thought about the school
Yeah.
as separate from the community. I guess that's
That's what I was thinking.
It's like it's the town. I mean, the school, so I will take a look at the bill.
Yeah, and I found this year was the biggest effect, because I.
Good God, yeah.
Yeah, I never opted in because it wasn't that much difference and, whatever. And then this year, I have an all-electric house, so we had an
Oh,
$800
boy.
electric bill come December. And my wife was, well, did you ever opt into that thing? And I opted in. The next month, we used almost the same. We did 100 kilowatts and went down to 300 something. So we're talking less than half. So
Big difference.
the big difference, just to let you know. Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks,
thank you.
Chat.
Have a good day.
Anything else we want to discuss?
Is there anything different with this budget?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's an adjustment to the pensions, $35,000 added on that. I still have to do a little bit more tweaking, especially with the liability and casualty. It's going to go up 7. The other changes that I am waiting to hear from Don on is my revenue projections, to make sure that the 3 pilot payments, which I just included in the revenue projections, and I have sent them over to her. She's the one who suggested the pension adjustment. I want to hear from her as to whether the pilot, which is technically business property, is it already captured in one side, and therefore it's unnecessary for the 3 pilots. So that's going to make a difference of $17,000. I just got the Chubb, so the Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I got the liability bill today here, and that's going to go up something.
So we're not having the other one in front of me, so this is, the town side's down on this one. Versus the
From the-
previous one?
Yeah, probably somewhat.
That's good, so
And
possibly less with gas stabilization.
if per chance, I mean, I went through our revenue files from SoftWrite, and, I only have a read capacity in certain areas, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But like I said, I want another set of eyes, experienced eyes, looking at those revenue numbers to make sure if they're good, I think we're okay. We're going to be all right.
Okay, well, maybe we squeaked by another one.
One day at a time, dear Lord, one day at a time, and in this town, 1 year at a time. We have a lot going on, there's no doubt about it, but I think that we'll get through this.
All right, I'm ready to close the meeting. Anybody else have anything to add or subtract or whatever?
Just real quick, have you got anywhere at the legislators meeting? Has anyone confirmed for that?
25th, so I'm going to actually have my my manager's meeting tomorrow, and Paul Mark is scheduled to be there, so I'm going to collar him. I'm going to extend an invitation to Representative Barrett, and we got the solid date of the 25th yesterday. So now that we have that.
Solid date from the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't know if it's going to be Paul Mark or an assistant or?
No, that's at my manager's meeting.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, that's tomorrow, so I will be there in the morning.
Okay.
So, and I will chase him down the hallway. I know Paul somehow, so.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'd like a motion to close the meeting of the Clarksburg Select Board on Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 at 2:06 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.